why does anime as a medium exist and how does it set itself apart from the rest of the artistic mediums? In the 1950s, when anime as a medium was just being produced at a decent enough scale, its biggest enemy was Disney. Disney was a beast in the West. It was producing films with such high quality animation that the world was shocked at how good these animators were. But Japan wasn't as far behind the race. Astro Boy's success had an impact on anime's growth, but looking at Astro Boy, you can see that it still isn't the anime aesthetic we know and love. The anime we know as true anime was a style that was partly developed by the animators working during the 50s and the 60s, who worked tirelessly with trial and error to make better animations. Hayao Miyazaki and Osamu Tezuka are some big names who were working in Toei during that time. Hayao Miyazaki, obviously the founder of Studio Ghibli, and Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga. Japan still wasn't as good as Disney. Even though Toei was making one color feature film a year, its success was nowhere near Disney's. And when the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out, it basically sucker punched Japanese animators in the face, and it was a sign to Japan that they would have to up their game if they wanted to be even considered as a competition to Disney, because their live counterpart was far ahead in the race. As I said, the first-gen animators working at Toei and Mushi Productions in the 60s were constantly experimenting with new techniques to make the whole animation process faster and more efficient. And soon, they developed an animation technique called the money shot, or also known as Sakuga. Sakuga is something which is really specific to anime. It basically means that the shots which weren't as important to the script wouldn't have high quality animation, and the shots which actually had the most amount of impact would be the ones on which the producers would use most amount of resources on, and ultimately they would have the best animation. Other than Sakuga, another thing that just evolved naturally was the anime art style. Anime is just reality simplified to its core. Unlike many other Western cartoons and animations, anime still always tries to maintain realistic proportions, so getting there was also a struggle. Artists tried to minimize the details, so obviously these characters would be easy to animate, and that's how they ended up with the big-eyed, big-headed, small-mouth aesthetic. Also, the eyes were made much bigger and enhanced because in reality, eyes convey the most amount of emotions. All these techniques combined together made the anime production much more faster and efficient. Soon, Miyazaki made Future by Conan and Lupin the Third, both of which were critically acclaimed, and that's where the 70s ended. And now we enter the 80s, or also known as the golden age of anime. Why though? Well, 80s is the time all the experimentation of the animators finally paid off. Anime quite literally went through a visual quality renewal, thanks to directors like Isao Takahata, Katsuhiro Otomo, and of course Hayao Miyazaki, who had left Nippon Animations and founded Studio Ghibli. Anime had began dealing with more complex and nuanced storylines. The visuals of anime were also distinct and they were more mature than ever. This is how Japan finally came out of Disney's shadows. It was different and unique, and also the stories and plot lines weren't as simple and childish like Disney's were during that period. In 1982, Gundam's movie came out, and its success introduced us to a genre we all know now as mecha. The world already loved space operas due to Star Wars, and the Gundam franchise capitalized on that. Soon Hayao Miyazaki made The Valley of Wind, which is also known as one of the most influential anime movies of all times. And looking at the visuals, it isn't hard to tell why. Ghibli had done astounding work, but soon a movie came along which changed the whole world. Yes, Akira came out in 1988 and it was straight up phenomenal. Right from the animation to the plot to the immensely complex world building, it was something which was never seen before in the animation space. Katsuhiro Otomo showed us what big of a difference the actual world building and screenplay can make when it's done correctly. Why was Akira so phenomenal? Get this, This quality was produced in the 1980s. And also, the storyline that Akira was dealing with wasn't so common. The level of maturity the script had was way different than all the other animation films that were being produced during that time. Anime till now had struggled with the animation part. If giving motion was the primary obstacle, then forget about having actual cinematography. Making anime cinematic was a far-fetched idea, and that was only reserved for filmmakers. But after Akira came out, anime had the biggest boom it was ever gonna experience. The visual quality just kept on improving with every new anime that released. Lots of young talent was ingested in the industry, which ultimately started giving us the best animation in the world during that time. What contributed more to the visuals of anime was the style of each individual animator being showcased. During production, especially in these high-level studios, for maintaining consistency throughout the animation, animators didn't have the freedom to do things in their own style. But in anime, this wasn't the case. Each and every animator brought their own skill set into production. Animators like Shinya Ohira had a style in which the characters felt like they are literally filled with water. And there is visually no definition to the line work, but still the motion feels so fluid and soothing. Another animator named Yutaka Nakamura has his very unique style of breaking objects and representing impact. These cubes which appear when an object gets destroyed isn't how physics works in real life at all. But still, overall, what I meant to say is that all the animators brought something unique and special of their own to the table, and even if it meant that the consistency will break a little due to varying styles, it still wasn't a problem. Again, as years passed, the quality of animation kept on improving. Studio Ghibli was making films which were the best of its time. Directors started focusing more on all the little details which could make their films more immersive. Studio Ghibli especially showed the world that how huge of an impact colors and world building can have on animations. World building, and that too immersive world building in animation, is a daunting task because unlike other mediums, each and everything in the frame had to be meticulously planned and hand-drawn. It wasn't an easy task at all, but that's where Studio Ghibli excelled. Movies like Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro pioneered the entire magical fantasy mixed with real-life genre. Even though these films had fantasy elements, the viewer never felt a disconnect due to the visuals which kept them immersed. Miyazaki was a master at this, and soon the anime industry exploded. Movies like Ocean Waves, made by Ghibli in 1993, is a good example of excellent screenplay and direction but a meh storyline. Anime by now had captivated its audience. These bright and vivid colors, the lovable yet relatable character designs were something which you could only find in anime. Anime movies saw an amazing improvement in quality as well. In the 2000s, movies like Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon and A Girl Who Leapt Through Time by Mamoru Hosoda became cult classics. Not only they had amazing animation, but the compound storyline these directors were dealing with added a whole new layer of beauty to these animations. As I said, the story isn't what mattered the most now. It was the execution of the script that mattered. The screenplay, the music, and the overall direction carried much more weight, as in the end, that's what made the film more appealing, aesthetic, and lovable. Talking about the visual anime appeal, we cannot leave out Makoto Shinkai, the guy who made movies like Your Name, 5 cm per second, and his recent release Tenki no Ko. Each of these films can be said to have the best 2D visuals on the entire planet, period, and I'm not even exaggerating. Shinkai's formula was simple. The stories had to have simple plots, but it had to be magical, and the representation of this magical feel should be top notch. It should evoke a dreamy and a vivid feeling inside the viewer, much like how Ghibli did, but in a more realistic and modern manner. And Makoto, being the absolute mad lad of a talent he is, he pulls it off every freaking time. I won't ever say that the visuals of anime were majorly achieved due to people like Miyazaki, Shinkai, Hosoda, or even Satoshi, but rather it was a product of all the combined effort of the animators constantly working over 50 years and experimenting to make anime to the best of their ability. That's why anime is so unique and vivid, and that is how anime went from literally nothing to actual world-class cinema.